What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about a movie that is a little bit older now, but that I wanted to watch after seeing Oz Perkins the Monkey this year. It was not my favorite movie by any means, but I've become a big fan of Oz Perkins and the way that he approaches horror. I loved Longlegs, and I think The Black Coat's Daughter is absolutely incredible. And so he has two other films in his filmography that I hadn't seen, and this movie I remember when it was initially released, it had a very tepid reaction. It didn't seem like people really enjoyed it all that much. There were some very glaringly positive reviews, but I feel like there was a lot of negativity surrounding this. And something happened recently where I saw like a little brief clip of it, and I was like, with how much I like Oz's other work, I'm really interested to watch this movie. So I finally sat down and checked it out. And the film I'm going to be telling you about today is Gretel and Hansel. Gretel and Hansel is directed by Oz Perkins. A long time ago in a distant fairy tale countryside, a young girl leads her little brother into a dark wood in desperate search of food and work, only to stumble upon a nexus of terrifying evil. So I was really excited to watch this. Like I said, I'm a really big fan of Oz Perkins. Despite not loving The Monkey, I was a huge fan of Longlegs. It was one of my favorite movies from that year, and I love The Black Coat's Daughter. And what I will say, I think this movie is incredibly misunderstood, and I absolutely loved it. I feel like under different circumstances, like I kept thinking if this movie had like an A24 logo smacked at the beginning of it, that a lot more people would have gone to see it and probably would have had a very different perception of the film, because I feel like this is taking a fairy tale story that a lot of people know and changing elements of it to create an incredibly empowering story about women. And I feel like the way that this movie approaches how women are perceived and utilizing things like witchcraft and the perception of witchcraft when it comes to just women existing. I thought Oz did a really phenomenal job tackling a lot of that subject matter while also creating an eerie, ominous, and unsettling film very much to the likes of Robert Eggers' The Witch. It's not like there's jump scares happening every 5 minutes in this movie, but it's very unsettling. And even though if you've read Hansel and Gretel and you understand sort of the direction that the story is trying to go, Oz takes some creative liberties with it and does some different things that I feel like make it its own unique story. And I'm really excited to tell you about it today. So at the beginning of the film, we are introduced to Gretel and Hansel. Gretel is played by Sophia Lillis, who a lot of people know from the It remake, and she's been in quite a few things now. And we see them at the beginning of the movie, and they're at home with their mother, and their mother essentially seems to be losing her mind. She says that the kids can't live with her anymore. She can't afford to pay for their food, and she essentially like threatens to harm them, and they have to run out of the house and try to find survival on their own. And they struggle for several days. Gretel decides to go like make a plea to this very wealthy man who comes on to her in a very disgusting, gross way, and she ends up leaving. And so they're struggling until eventually they stumble upon this home of this man who ends up helping fight off this person who attempts to attack them. And he lets them stay there for a night and says, "Hey, I'm going to direct you this way where you should be able to go and find work and shelter and eventually make a life for yourself." And so the kids reluctantly agree. They go on that path, but along the way, a house appears on that path where Hansel smells like baked goods and all of these different things. And Gretel is very off put by it, but they decide to go there anyway. And they meet a woman in the house who is played by Alice Krige. And she invites them in and she says, "Hey, you can stay here for the night. I'll take care of you." And Gretel is sort of off put by this at first because she has this bounty of food, but it doesn't seem that she has any livestock on the property or any way to accumulate that. But because she's essentially starving, she decides, okay, we'll stay here. And the woman eventually agrees to let the kids live there if they help her complete labor around the house, doing like mundane cleaning tasks and those things. And the entirety of the film is Hansel and Gretel living at the house of this woman, uncovering things about her and slowly discovering, obviously, that she is a witch. So, like I said, I loved this movie, and I think there are a ton of reasons why it works so incredibly well. For starters, the cinematography and production design in this are spectacular. I kept thinking about all the reasons why I love Longlegs and The Black Coat's Daughter, and this just gets bucketed right in there with that. There are so many haunting images in this movie, and I feel like the way Oz Perkins utilizes color is just phenomenal. There are so many moments in this that are going to be seared into my brain for quite some time because of the patience of the cinematographer and where the camera is placed. There's a lot of like really wide shots, especially this one room that is revealed in the house that has very high ceilings. Like there's so many moments that I feel like Oz pays very close attention to detail with where characters are placed in the frame or specific imagery is placed in the frame to invoke a very specific feeling. And I felt like there were a lot of moments in this movie that like the imagery is truly horrifying and sat with me in a way that made me very uncomfortable, and I was really appreciative of that. I also loved the score of this movie. I thought it was absolutely incredible. Very unique choice of music for this type of a film set in this specific time period. And at first, I didn't know whether or not it was going to work. As the film continued to play on and on, I felt like it was the perfect choice of music for the movie. It's very synth driven, and I feel like it's cued in just the right moments. There were so many times during the movie that I was like, yeah, this just accompanies this very brilliantly. And I thought that the way it played with the visuals of the movie worked really well. And I also really enjoyed Sophia Lillis's performance as Gretel in this. I thought that she was really fantastic, especially with the development that her character has to go through. And she really is the one who has to be incredibly perceptive to the situation because her younger brother, he doesn't really get it. He's a child and he's kind of put in this situation where he's starving and he's thinking with his gut before anything else. And I think that she does a really phenomenal job. And Alice Krige, who plays the woman that's in the house, I really loved her performance as well. She does a really great job at kind of toying with your emotions throughout because in the middle of the movie, I thought, is Oz going to take this in a different direction of the fairy tale? Is he going to try to do something differently? And because of her performance, it's easy to kind of be pushed and pulled into thinking, is she just going to be pure evil? Or is this going to kind of turn the story on its head? And I thought that was a really cool thing. And this actress does a really phenomenal job at adding to that. But my favorite part of this movie is it's really scary and it does a really great job at building very unsettling and uncomfortable atmosphere. But what I really love is how this story is just an allegory for the experience of women. When we see Gretel's character early on in the movie, like that disgusting man who says all these really off-color comments about like, is she still a virgin? All these different things. And then her kind of fear of that man who stumbles upon them and like, how is he going to try to take advantage of the situation with her? And then like hearing all these people early on in the film telling her like, you're only going to be able to do one thing with your life. You're going to be expected to feel this specific way. And then when she comes into contact with the witch and like learning about these powers, and it's clear that Gretel in this specific circumstance has this ability that we're learning about throughout. And it's almost like embracing your power as a woman. And like the witch has become completely and totally jaded to society because of the perception of women and has like used her power in a way that she feels like is justifiable because of the evils of the world. And like in this particular circumstance with Gretel's character, it's about like embracing that power as a woman and saying, I can do something different with it, or I can go down the same path as this witch. And I thought that that was a really phenomenal way to kind of shape the story. And I think like there's so many little things that reign true to the experience of women in our society because it is hard to exist as a woman even in 2025, especially with like the current political administration and the way that they look at women and women's bodily autonomy. And just like even when I see women in positions of power that work their way up into industries, like the scrutiny that they face and the struggles that they have to deal with in comparison to men, it's just wild. You think we would be beyond that to where equality would be so much easier to seek. And so I love that Bob used this movie in this very particular fairy tale to kind of unpack a lot of those things and to discuss them in a way that I feel like people can relate to. And that was my favorite part of this movie is it's not just a great fairy tale that also incorporates horror really well. It's a fantastic allegory about women and it's executed in a very brilliant way. And I'm really surprised that this movie had such like a tepid reaction. I feel like this is up there for me in one of my favorite horror things I've watched recently. It has some pacing issues and it's not a perfect movie, but I really enjoyed it a lot. And I could easily see myself revisiting this several times in the near future. So, have you seen Gretel and Hansel? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was excellent. And honestly, I'm really surprised that more people didn't enjoy it. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.